Welcome, everybody, to another one of Redeemer's online campus videos, another Zoomcast with Father Wood. And joining me today is one of my best friends from seminary and also one of my teachers in seminary after he graduated. This is Father Alexander Pryor of Fort Smith, Canada. If you're not sure where that is, you're about to find out. Father Pryor is actually Martha's godfather, one of Martha's godfathers, and Kate and I are godparents to Lorelei, his little girl, and we became very good friends at Nashotah House. Father Alex was the director of chapel at Nashotah House and the director of church music. I think those were your titles, and now he is the rector of Fort Smith in the Diocese of the Arctic. Welcome, Father Alex.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So first of all, the thing I mentioned that you're in a diocese of the Arctic and you're at Fort Smith. So could you please tell us where in the world is Father Alex Pryor?
Where in the world? We're at the top of the world. That's where we are, Father Chris. So the Diocese of the Arctic covers two of the northern territories of Canada. So if you look on a globe or on a map, all those little islands up there at the top of North America, those are part of this diocese. So the Diocese of the Arctic is the largest diocese in the Anglican Communion, but also perhaps it's definitely the most sparsely populated. So we have 51 parishes spread out from one side of the continent to the other. And we only have, 6 parishes that have roads. You can only drive to 6 of them. The other of the 51, there are no roads. You can take your snowmobile. There are still some clergy who travel by dog team in winter, or you take a plane. Or on the eastern part of the diocese, they use boats and go from community to community by boat during the summer months.
What about helicopters?
We are north.
Helicopters?
Not many helicopters. Well, there are helicopters up here, but I don't know of many clergy that travel that way. Now, I'm not in one of those terribly isolated places, relatively speaking. We're only 12 hours from Walmart, so we're not that isolated.
Say that one more time.
We're only 12 hours from Walmart.
Did you all get that?
Well, yeah. If you need to go grab something, it only takes you a couple of days to get there, right? We're not that isolated. And let me just throw up a map of the diocese. So this is the northern part of Canada. These yellow pins are all of our parishes. And if you look on the left side of your screen, you see that row of pins that follows the Mackenzie River, because all the communities here grew up in the fur trading days along the Mackenzie River. And Fort Smith is that bottommost one on the left side. We are on the banks of the Slave River. So that's where I am.
Wow. That's incredible. So for all the Floridians listening, just so you know, for more perspective on where Father Alex is, he is 2,649 miles north of Sarasota, Florida, where I am right now. And so I'm wondering, do you know how far you are from the North Pole?
I haven't measured that. Usually when we're thinking about distances, we're thinking about going south, right? Yeah. Not further north. I don't know for sure. But we're pretty close. Yeah, we're pretty close.
Yeah. All right. So tell us, when did you move from Wisconsin to Fort Smith?
I got here in June of 2019. Yeah.
Okay. And in the process of moving, everyone should know Father Alex, while he was working at Nashotah House, is a native of Newfoundland. I think I said that right.
Close enough. Newfoundland. Yeah.
Newfoundland, Canada. And so he was, I think in his heart, always ready to go back to his native land of Canada at some point in his ministry. And so Father Alex discerned and accepted a call to Fort Smith. And so when you discern that process, you guys leave Nashotah House, you leave Wisconsin, you head up to Fort Smith. What were the surprises when you first arrived?
Well, I mean, we had to get here first. Um, Driving with a U-Haul truck from Wisconsin up to here with two small kids and a dog, that itself was quite a trip. And along the way, I got bit by a tick and came down with Lyme disease. So, you know, just to make it more like an old-fashioned frontier story, right? Kind of like, there were days I felt kind of like I was playing the old Oregon Trail computer game, you know, waiting for someone to die of dysentery or something. But thanks be to God, we all made it. We were delayed getting here because the road was closed because of wildfires. So one of the things that, I mean, I didn't realize moving up north is that anywhere south of the tree line, like we are, we do have trees around here. That means you go about 100 kilometers north of here and you hit tundra. There's no more trees, it's just open land. We do have trees here, but they just let the wildfires burn until they get close to a community. It's just wild open land. The lightning strikes, and the ecologists and biologists all say, well, let's let nature run its course. But that means that there are weeks, most summers, this summer was an exception, when the highway gets shut down, maybe for a week at a time while a fire burns its way through. So we were shut down. The highway was shut down on our trip up here. And we had to wait a couple of days and then had to be escorted through a fire zone by police with our U-Haul truck while the fire was still burning on both sides of the highway.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was, I was not expecting that on my trip north. Yeah, so that was surprising. When we got here, I was surprised by the weather. I mean, you think north, you think cold. And believe me, when winter comes, it gets cold. When winter comes, it gets dark. I mean, thanks be to God, we're not that far north here in Fort Smith where the sun doesn't come up at all. Like if you were in Inuvik, which is another one of our parishes, just a bit further up the Mackenzie, they go a couple months every winter without the sun. We're not that far north, but the sun doesn't come up in winter. It means it doesn't set in summer. So it actually gets quite hot. Like in June, the sun is up pretty much 24/7 here. So it was, when we moved here, when we were unloading the truck, it was just around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And no one up here has air conditioning. So yeah, challenges. There you go. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I didn't know about the fires, about you guys heading up. I knew it was warm when you all got there, but that's a harrowing journey that you all took. How'd the kids handle the fires? Were they freaked out, or was it cool for them?
Well, Lorelai was freaked out by it all, you know, and had some bad dreams and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Theo thought it was all pretty cool.
That sounds like Theo.
Yeah.
All right, so you're up in Fort Smith, and besides, you know, the 12 hours to Walmart, which is incredible, and I know for a fact, because Kate and I tried to send you some stuff on Amazon. Amazon doesn't deliver where you live.
No.
What are some of the differences in ministry in Fort Worth, as opposed to, juxtapose that to like rural ministry in the United States or in other parts of Canada?
Well, I guess the first thing that sets it apart is the isolation. Like, it's one thing to be rural, to be a small town. And I mean, I grew up in Newfoundland in a small fishing town, but we were only 2 hours from the city, right? If you needed to see a doctor, if you graduated and were going off to university, you were only 2 hours from the city. The difference here is the isolation, and all we take so much for granted in terms of being connected and having access to the things that we want. But here, I mean, even though, I mean, in town, things are pretty normal for 21st century. No, I mean, no, we don't have Amazon delivery, but we do have cell phones, but they only reach within town. If I'm going to go to Hay River to see my colleague at the parish there, or to go get a part for the car, because that's where the garage is, that's a 2.5-hour drive across the woodland, but there's no cell phones outside of town. There are no towers. There's no radio. We don't have those sorts of things, right? So there's a lot that when you think of rural, you think of small town life, but we have the extra layer of isolation. Mm. And when you put winter into that mix, and the highway is blocked for a couple days because there's a storm, so we get a truck. The grocery store gets a truck once a week. So if that truck is held up waiting for the snow to be cleared, then you go 2 weeks without lettuce, without tomatoes, without fruit. That's just part of isolation. So we have the rural aspects of life plus isolation on top of it. I guess that's one of the things up here that I realized first right off the bat is what I would call like the frontier spirit is still very strong. Like people are very proud and very hardworking, and basically have the attitude of we're going to do this. We're going to make it work. And a lot of that comes just from the nature of where we are. And so, I mean, can you run down the street to the muffler shop if your muffler falls off your truck? No, you can't, because there isn't one. So your options are, either you buy a new truck and get it shipped in, or you get a wire coat hanger and you get a pair of pliers and you make it work. And it works for as long as it works. And then if you can't get a new truck, well, you get a wire coat hanger and you fix it again. And that goes with just being here. We can't run to the store and get what we need. We need to use what's here. So it's very old-fashioned that way. And that spills over into ministry. The way the church, the way the congregations approach everything from coffee hour to Sunday school, we use the materials that we have. And because you can't run out and grab something for a craft. You have to order it a couple months in advance. Yeah.
What about spiritually? As far as prayer life, and how has the isolation affected you as a priest? Where I have the privilege of being able to be around other priests, to be around. I'm a 20-minute ride away from the diocesan house. When convention happens, it's we drive an hour south of here and that sort of thing. How has it been spiritually for you as far as the prayer life, and how has isolation affected that? How have you, especially coming from a place like the Shota House, where you're constantly surrounded by colleagues who are praying with you? How does the isolation affect you spiritually, and how have you developed, and I think maybe a new or a changed spirituality, in order to combat that isolation?
Well, that's a good question. When we came here, one of the first things, after we met people and started settling in, the isolation that comes from being the priest, the country parson assigned to this place, is that, especially coming from a place like the Shota House, where you've got your colleagues, you've got friends, and you can go, you can have time off. Mm-hmm. Here, the parish office is in my house. This is the parish office. It's in the rectory. My home phone number is on a sign out on the road. And I am the priest. So, not to say that we don't have friends. I've made some great friends here, but I am their priest. There isn't another church for them to go to, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's one of the real aspects of isolation. Spiritually, if I didn't have morning prayer in the church, I don't know if I would have made it through last winter, and I certainly wouldn't have made it through this COVID-19 craziness.
Mhm.
So, I mean, one of the things I started as soon as I got here was getting up in the morning, um, hauling on my cassock, going next door to the church, and like the old prayer book says, the Canadian 1962 prayer book that we still use for the daily offices, it says, ring the bell to let the people know you're praying for them and to tell them that they can come too if they want. So I go over every day, Tuesday to Friday, and ring the bell and go up to my stall at the front of the church and read the prayers.
Mm.
And I mean, just that rhythm, something that I learned from Nashotah House, of course, 8 years there on campus doing the daily office. But that rhythm is, in many ways, the only certain thing in my day. I mean, I have no idea when I get back from morning prayer. There's going to be at least one, if not more than one, messages on the parish phone. And that could be anything from, someone wanting a home communion brought to my presence being requested at a suicide intervention. It could be a call for me to advocate for someone who's not getting the medical treatment that they need. It could be a call for me to put someone under oath to take an affidavit for a court case. These are all things that I get called to do as the rector of Fort Smith. So I just have no idea one day to the next what it's going to look like, and why COVID-19 just made that so much crazier. If I didn't have that constancy every morning of saying those prayers, knowing that some days there's someone there with me, especially before COVID-19 started, there would be at least one or two parishioners show up. You never knew who it was going to be, but whoever had a day off, whoever felt the need to come to the church would come and join me. But especially on those days that I'm there myself, through my time at Nashotah House, through teaching at Nashotah House, I really learned to appreciate that in the prayer of St. Chrysostom, that when 2 or 3 are gathered, it's not talking about the 2 or 3 that I see, right? Because if it was, that would be really depressing to pray when you're there by yourself and the church is cold and the furnace is broke and you're shivering in your cassock and you're overworked and you're tired. And you're reading lessons from Job, it's that would just be really depressing.
Yeah.
To talk about the 2 or 3 are gathered, but I'm the only one here. But knowing that the 2 or 3 being gathered in prayer is not just about me in the church. It's about the church, wherever the church is being gathered in prayer, in the body of Christ. And that's something that you don't really appreciate until there's no one else to pray with you. And that's when you really appreciate what the body of Christ means. Like, you need to know deep down on those days when you're dealing with impossible situations, when you're dealing with social workers and foster families and kids being taken into foster care, when you're dealing with alcoholics slipping out of recovery and having to start from day one, and the turmoil that goes with their families, and not having the medical resources, not having the social work resources in town to deal with that. When that's what your day might look like, knowing that, well, at Nashotah House, at every church where there is a faithful priest or lay people praying, knowing that at Redeemer Sarasota, there are people praying for the body of Christ in the world.
Mm.
Whether or not they know me, whether or not they know what my schedule looks like that day, that's actually huge.
Mm.
Well, and the prayer for peace in the old prayer books, Order for Morning Prayer, is the Collect for Peace is said, and the Collect for Grace are said every day.
Mm.
And I've really learned a new appreciation for the words of that prayer when we ask God to defend us from the assaults of our enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are, I'm almost going to tear up, I'm sorry. There are so many forces at work around us, especially in the community, dealing with the sorts of issues that get amplified by racial relations and indigenous issues and isolation and a lack of resources. Like if I didn't have the prayers of the body of Christ, even if they don't know they're praying for me, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to do this. Let me also say, though, that this diocese has worked really hard and has done great work in supporting clergy. So even though we're really isolated, we have a diocesan bishop and 3 suffragan bishops, and so there's everyone has a bishop who speaks their language and with whom they can relate. And I must say, I've never known bishops to communicate like these ones do. By the grace of God, it's wonderful. It's nothing just to get a call out of the blue from the bishop to say, how are you doing? What are you dealing with? What can I add to the diocesan prayer list?
Wow.
And that's just awesome to have that. And I mean, when it works, when the internet is working, when we have cell phone connections, there is a great support network there as well.
Wow, that's awesome. I really, that's an amazing answer, and
this is the first time too I've had a bishop who or any boss who like insisted that I go away, right? So one of the things across the diocese is that all clergy have 6 weeks of annual leave. And the diocese, our stipends are modest, but included in that, we're given tickets for our entire families to fly down south or fly somewhere. And we have to leave our physical community for at least a couple weeks. And the bishops have been good at enforcing that because there is, like I said, we are the priest. If I'm here, I'm on call.
Yeah.
If I go to the grocery store, I know by name 75% of the people I'm going to run into, and 100% of the people I run into know me by name, right? So there's no, well, this is my week off or this is my day off. You have to actually leave.
Yeah. That's incredible. So you've hit a good segue here. Tell us, you've talked a little bit about some of the indigenous folks that live up in Fort Smith. Tell us about the makeup of your parish. I don't have a good way of saying it. So tell us about the makeup of your parish.
All right. Let me talk first about the makeup of the town, if that's okay.
When I said parish, I was kind of meaning it in the old sense.
Well, yeah, good. You should. You never know. I mean, there are too many people in the church who think of parish as the congregation. Mm-hmm. But it's really important that we know that parish means a mission field, right? Yeah. Parish is a geographical area that we have claimed as our mission field. And that's the way we use the term up here. Absolutely, the old way. So the parish of Fort Smith has a population of 2,500. So that's the makeup of this community. And that's divided a number of different ways. So here in the town of Fort Smith, we have the headquarters of 3 different indigenous groups. all three of which have reserve lands around the community. So it's a little unique that way, in that we don't have, over the years, there's a complicated history, but the way that Fort Smith developed, we don't have the indigenous groups living on their own reserves, but everyone lives in town, and none of the indigenous groups claim the town. They're not fighting over each other's land that they're on, generally. But they have the reserve lands in the area where they hunt and trap and do their traditional activities and spend their time on the land and those sorts of things. So in Fort Smith, we have the Salt River First Nation, which is a Dene people. They speak Cree and Chippewayan, which are taught in the schools here, as well as English and French, of course. We also have Smith's Landing First Nation, which is here in town, and they are also a Cree and Chippewayan people. And then we have the Northwest Territories Métis Nation. And the Métis, they are an indigenous group that has a French heritage. So they are the children and the great-great-grandchildren of the French fur traders who married the indigenous peoples in Eastern Canada. And as Europeans moved into Canada, the Métis moved further and further west. And in the 1800s, moved in large numbers to this area. So we've got a rather large indigenous population. And then about a third of the community here are European settlers, is one of the terms that's used. So people whose families came here with the Hudson's Bay Company, with the Northwest Company, as fur traders back in the mid-1800s, and have been here ever since. Now, one of the interesting things here in Fort Smith, we used to be the capital of the Northwest Territories before it moved to Yellowknife, and we still have a lot of government offices here. So then we have people from the South. People
By
from
the South, you mean South Canada, not like Georgia.
Yeah, and I mean like people from like Toronto and Vancouver, and a lot of people from the East Coast, from Halifax and Moncton, in that area, who will finish university and be looking for a job, and take a job up here on like a 2 or 3 year contract, and fly up. And I mean, one of our ongoing strategic growth areas in the town is helping those people connect with the townlets here rather than just stick amongst themselves. You do get some division there. It's an interesting, very interesting makeup of the community. And then, I mean, there are the historic indigenous issues that go along with that. Fort Smith had one of the federal Indian residential schools, as they were called. Going back into the 1800s, the indigenous peoples were first forced to settle in communities, not to live their nomadic hunting lifestyle out on the land. And then over time, over a generation or two, were expected to go to the schools that were set up by the churches, the Anglican Church, the Roman Catholic Church, particularly, were contracted by the government to set up schools. And then children were forced to go to these schools. Unfortunately, especially in the residential schools, that's where the kids had to live in a boarding setting. They were given, they were not allowed to speak their traditional languages or eat traditional foods. They were basically making them into European settlers. And when that didn't work, and of course it didn't, you get the result of people of generations not having learned their traditional ways, but also we failed to give them the skills that they need to live in the towns that we forced them to live in. So you end up with entire generations that are stuck in between the old way of life that worked for centuries and they were very good at, but not having the skills that we attempted to give them. And then of course you have the generations of financial troubles and alcohol troubles and everything that goes with that. Yeah. So that sort of reconciliation, that sort of healing is very much ongoing. And thanks be to God, it's something that we talk about openly now. I mean, there was a time when that was something that you didn't want to talk about in polite company. But now we're at a place in Canada and here in this community when we can talk about the injustices that were done. And, you know, as a priest, where I can admit the things that the church did that were not very Christ-like. And then we can, not to dwell on the past, but to look at the future and look at the healing and wholeness that we need to find now. Yeah. And then grow forwards. So it's an interesting community in that regard.
It's you guys could be a role model for the churches in America right now, because that's desperately what we need also.
Yeah, the hardest part, and you know, the Anglican Church of Canada as a whole has been working for close to 2 decades now to get to the point where we are now, where we can have these conversations without people getting their backs up. I mean, it really takes a big step and a lot of growth to be able to hear the things that that my people did in the past, and not hear it as blame, to use the word that's often thrown around, on me, because you know I wasn't here. My people are from Newfoundland, but especially as a priest, I know what was done by people who wore collars that like I wear, and I know I can own. I have no trouble owning that what they did was not appropriate. It was not Christ-like. Was a failure of the church's mission, and that what we need to do, as the church has done, is acknowledge that fault, but then do better, right? And that's the thing. We need to acknowledge that fault and then do better. Not to sit around and acknowledge it all day long and not do anything about it. But it's like, okay, well, if we have these issues, we have the alcoholism that has come from that. Well, we're working right now. This is one of the things that came out of our visioning last spring. We're launching a program called Celebrate Recovery. It's a Christian, biblically based 12 steps program based on the Beatitudes, actually. Wow. And we're right now raising up and training some leaders in the community who have come through addictions themselves, who can help lead that, right? So it's not about just acknowledging what was done and dwelling in the past, but of course, and that's always a challenge for Anglicans and Episcopalians, because, you know, we have our beautiful worship, we have our traditions. I love the past. You know, I taught church music. I trained you to sing like a choir boy at King's College, right? That was my goal, and I'm proud of that. But we have to move forward and address the needs, right? And that's a lot of what we're working on here in Fort Smith.
Amazing. So you've spoken about it a little bit already. Tell me a little more about the ministry specifically to the Indigenous people of Fort Smith.
Right. So, Fort Smith is a model in that our community, we strive to be a community. not the Salt River people versus the Métis people versus the white people in Fort Smith. In that way, I think, and that was a little surprising, especially knowing what I know about Indigenous ministry to Native Americans on a reserve setting.
Mm-hmm.
Where here the approach is to serve the community, knowing that the community is 2/3 Indigenous, but that it also requires to keep in mind that not every Indigenous person's needs are the same. They're a person, right? So, because you can go too far the other way.
Yep.
You can, where you say, and not just in an Indigenous setting, you can go too far the other way. And when you're thinking about inner city ministry or, urban ministry, you can go too far the other way. The issue historically grew because we saw these people as a single group of people that had to be managed. And the solution can't be seeing this population as a single group of people that need to be managed. Right. No, these are individuals, and we need to reach out to them with the gospel and with whatever supports our community needs. Here, we talk largely about our community and what our community needs, and everything is open to all, and that's something I found fascinating. So, like when Salt River First Nation puts on their healing workshops and they have reconciliation workshops, they do on the land activities where they teach people their traditional ways that have been lost. They have their elders and knowledge keepers pass that information on. But one of the things that really surprised me is that that's not just for Salt River First Nation kids. So, like, my kids go to culture camp, and my daughter in kindergarten, they left school for 2 days, so that the 5-year-old could learn how to pluck a goose.
I saw that on your Facebook or Instagram. Right. That's really cool.
Right, and it's so important that they do it that way, because if it was just the kids of a certain Indian band, to use the old term, of an Indigenous group, if it was just their kids who had this experience, then we just build up segregation again.
Yep.
Right? But it's so great that all the kids are saying, okay, well, this is how you pluck a goose. Like, this is useful.
Yeah.
These are real skills up here, right? But they do it together, and they go and unfortunately, I really hope COVID-19 doesn't throw a wrench into too much of that stuff, because the school throughout the year takes breaks and sends the kids on these on the land activities. Mm-hmm. And encourages parents to take their kids out of school for a few days to go berry picking and hunting. I've never been much of a hunter, ever, but one of the things I had to do, I had to do for ministry here was take my firearms course and get my firearms card so that I can get my rifle. We need to do all that in Canada to have a hunting rifle, and go hunting, because it's part of life up here, to fill your own freezer and to share the meat. One of the Dene laws is to share your catch with the elders. And I'm a young guy, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna hunt and I'm gonna share the fruit of the land with the elders.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a good guide take you out there.
Well, we're planning it already. Actually, let me tell you something crazy.
You've told me a couple crazy things already.
I know. But I was yesterday I got a phone call from the bishop asking if I wanted to go moose hunting with him. So and it's I was trained at Nashotah House when the bishop, hello, Your Grace. The bishop doesn't like to be called His Grace. I found that out very quickly. But one of the, he asked me if I would go moose hunting with him. Not a couple years ago, as I wore my beautifully tailored frock coat and my cassock with 39 buttons, I never would have pictured myself moose hunting with my bishop. But there you go.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
That's, learning to hunt is one of the things I want to do. I've got a lot of Floridians down here that are willing to teach me. And the bigger problem down here, actually, we have problem animals that are wild pigs. And I kind of think that'd be fun to hunt something that's a problem. And then if it's edible, eat it.
That's right.
Yeah, really cool stuff. All right, so you've talked about a lot of stuff. Tell me a little bit more about some of the duties you didn't expect. I know that you've told me about a couple, so I want you to share them with some other people. I know that the firearms training is one of the big ones.
Well, basically, priesthood in the North is exactly what Anglican missionaries in the 1800s would have been trained for, right? So you're coming to a community where, our graduation rate across the territory, our high school graduation rate is 51%. And according to the most recent news report, those numbers might be inflated. And that includes the territory. That includes the capital, the city where people finish school. So, I mean, our high school graduation, let alone college or university degrees, are not as common as you would hope they would be.
Yeah.
And especially when you put in the language barrier with the indigenous languages, when you take people who one of the things that we've always had with our kids is a love of reading, right? Like you like reading stories and stuff, but when your parents and your grandparents didn't really know how to read, you don't instill that love of reading in the next generation. Just as an example. So there's basically you get asked to do a lot of clerical things in the old sense of the term. The original Anglican definition of cleric, right? you're the priest, but you're also the guy who can write. So that's one of the things that surprised me a bit. Especially as one who came and with a very robust understanding of parish ministry, that this is ministry to the community, that everyone who lives here is a parishioner. They may not be a member of the congregation, but they're all parishioners. So, I mean, just a few examples. Shortly after I got here, I was commissioned as a notary public because we have no lawyers in this town. We do have a territorial courthouse, but we have no lawyers. So
like heaven.
Well, yeah. There you go. So I mean, the circuit judge comes in for the designated court day. They still have circuit judges here who rotate through. They fly in, and so. But you're largely on your own to do a lot of the paperwork. Unless you're someone who can hire an attorney from down south who can come and do it for you. Yeah. So a lot of helping people with documents, with government stuff. There's so things that like disability pension applications. I've helped a number of people with those, just because they don't have anyone who in their family that is confident in filling out the paperwork. I'm a designated tax filer for the Canada Revenue Agency, our version of the IRS. So people can't qualify for their benefits, the various benefits that they're entitled to, if they don't file their taxes. But if you don't have a computer, if you don't have internet, if you aren't confident in math and reading, how do you file your taxes? So if you might be unemployed, but then you're not going to get your benefits that would help you go back to school and get a job, because you don't know how to fill out the form. So you call the Anglican Church. And we, so far this year, as of the other day, I've gotten $22,000 of benefits into people's hands that they were eligible for but not getting.
That's incredible.
And in almost every case, that money has been used as I would like to see it used, to get clothes for your kids, to get food on your table, to sign up for a college course so you can finish that diploma that you were working towards. You know, and that's the sort of hands-on practical ministry that, you know, you don't think about when you're in seminary. You think, I'm going to preach, I'm going to visit the old ladies, I'm going to celebrate communion, I'm going to file taxes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing that can turn a family's life around, because now they have the benefits that were waiting for them that they didn't have access to, because we don't have the community support workers, the social workers that larger communities would have.
It's incredible.
So there's a fair bit of that. There's also a fair bit of advocacy work, like when people find themselves needing public housing, but not having the paperwork, or not knowing how to word why it is that they qualify. And the frustrations that go with that often get people turned away. That's somewhere.
You reached the office of Father Alex Pryor at St. John's Anglican
Sorry.
Church.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's a call coming in right now.
There you go.
There you go. So it's a lot of that sort of advocacy work, whether it's helping people articulate or just stand up for themselves, because we don't have the sort of people. I mean, most hospitals in larger centers would have social workers and things that would have a fleet of social workers and chaplains and things to do that. We don't have a chaplain here at the hospital.
You are a chaplain.
It's me. So, you know, if someone has a concern, if they want to chat but don't want to chat to one of the counselors, they call me, and I go over, and you know, and it's interesting. It's taken a lot of flexibility on my part. I mean, I'm never shy about who I am. I'm a Christian. I'm a priest. That's who I am. But I have to serve everybody, because it's not like we have 24 churches here of two dozen different brands that you can pick from. Right? I'm the priest. There's a Roman Catholic Church. They were between priests for a while. There is a Pentecostal congregation here. They're without a pastor. So right, I have to go and serve whoever calls. But which really, I think is how priesthood should be. I think if we see ourselves as just serving those within the four walls of the church, you know, I think we're missing a huge part of the Great Commission to go out. Right?
We're missing the Great Commission altogether.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been projecting on the wall now that we're worshiping back in our church, but we're not using our hymnals because of the COVID-19 restrictions. So we've been projecting the services on the wall. If you had told me a couple of years ago I'd be doing that, I would have had some strong words for myself. But alas, one of the things that at the very last slide says, worship has ended, now the service begins.
Amen.
Because, you know, we go to the church service. That's not, you know, we're not done church for the week. No, that's when we gather to get our marching orders, to gather our supplies so that we can go out onto the mission field.
Yeah, I preached about that last week. How the right one in our book, the right one Mass is that we offer ourselves, our souls and bodies, as a living sacrifice to
Living
God.
sacrifice. That was my sermon last Sunday. A living
Mine too.
sacrifice. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I wonder if we were trained in the same place.
Maybe we were. Yep.
Yeah, I talked about that a lot on Sunday. The importance of the living sacrifice that we are. So you've given us a lot. This has been one of the most interesting interviews I've ever done, and I'm excited to come visit Fort Smith at some point when I'm able to.
Yep, come on.
God willing, maybe on a sabbatical. I think it'd be a pretty cool thing to do. Tell me, to end this, tell me what do you absolutely love about Fort Smith?
I love I love the pace of things, though it's a real challenge to me. Now, I mean, Father Chris, you know me well, and am I someone who likes to get things done?
Yes, very much so.
Very much so.
And you can do anything from construction projects to you can do anything from construction projects to playing the most amazing piece on an organ.
Well, thank you. Yes, that's my personality. I get things done. Yes. And here we are on what everyone calls very proudly Northern Time. It's the reality of life, even in the present day, when you don't have your cell phone. Because if I leave town, if I go to visit one of my parishioners, even who lives out in Bell Rock, which is, maybe 3 miles from here, there's no phones, there's no cell phones out there, right? We have one tower right here in downtown. So it's the reality of not being able to contact people instantly. The former treasurer of the parish, who just stepped down in the spring, his house is out in the bush, 10 miles from here, but it's 2 miles in off the road on a dirt trail. So he's the treasurer. There's no internet out there. There's no electricity out there. So it's not like you can just like pull up a profit and loss statement to see how you're doing on your budget this month, right? Yeah. So as someone who is very good at getting stuff done, I'm very thankful that I've had to learn this new pace that even far before COVID-19 makes you call everything into perspective. So one of the things here that drove me nuts, let me just tell you this story. We got here, we signed our kids up for school. They told us all about the school year and the cultural camp, and they had to choose which of the indigenous languages they wanted to learn as their second language. It was all that was all great. School starts, and someone says, "Okay, well, see you again at 12." Like, what? Like, oh no, you've got to come pick up your kids. What? Like, no, you drop them off 8:30, but you have to pick them up again at 12 for lunch. Like, what? Like, no, like they got their lunch bag. Like, can't they? Like, no, because the teachers have to go home to eat lunch too. So like they need their lunch break, so the school closes every day. Yeah. So you stop what you're doing. Everyone in the whole town, you stop what you're doing at 11:55 and boot it over to the school parking lot, and you pick up your kids and you come home and you eat together as a family. Because what could be more important at your job? And I had several people tell me this as I was trying to they're like, what are you doing at work that could be more important than eating together as a family? It's like, wow. Yeah. Like the entire town shuts down every day for lunch. It's not very efficient. It drives me nuts. As someone who likes to get things done, I drop my kids off. I go to the church, ring the bell, say morning prayer. Got a couple of hours, and then I have to go turn on the oven, pop in whatever's for lunch, go get the kids, eat lunch with my family, drive them back, and then do my work. And when I got here, it was like, wow, like this is, how can I ever get anything done? But you know what a blessing it is? Like I and everybody in this town gets to see our kids in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Right? And talk about how their day was. Talk about, whatever fight they got into at recess. Theo. Yeah, but I'm very thankful for the pace of things. For just the idea that, the rector should have a vegetable garden, and the rector should grow his own potatoes. The rector should go hunting to fill his own family's freezer. And that's part of the work of being here and being part of the community. That's, even just a couple of years ago, I would have said that's absolutely insane. How very inefficient. That's not a way to get things done. But it's a way to, by embracing that lifestyle, I'm becoming, I won't say I've become, I'm becoming a part of the community. And you know what? Even in a pandemic, our church is growing.
Yeah.
Our church is growing. Our offerings, in the 3 months that we didn't meet, our offerings were up over last year by 15%.
We've experienced something similar at Redeemer.
Right? And it's like, I can't explain it.
Yeah.
Except, the grace of God, and there's good things going on. And there's ministry bearing fruit. It's just awesome. It's
incredible. Well, Father, we've finished up. Thank you so much for your time today. I know that time is precious up in the northern hemisphere, and I am so thankful.
I've got 3 messages on my phone since.
I'm so thankful to see you again. I've missed you terribly, and I look forward to seeing you again and to continuing a relationship, and maybe someday me getting up there to learn more about Fort Smith.
It's a great place to visit.
All right. God bless you.
Yeah. God bless.
Bye, everybody. Bye.